I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Marcus Garvey House in North Minneapolis. One of our regular editions of Conversations with Al McFarlane from the Marcus Garvey House. We call these the Front Room Sessions. Today I'm pleased to have dear friends and elders in our community, leaders in our community, talking about the question, the notion of service, the question of leadership, the question of community building, and how we create institutions that impact and effect this work of building community. Today is really special because Dr. Josie Johnson and I are being presented a wonderful gift that we were awarded last year as part of the We Impact celebration dinner that is presented by, Impact Living Christian Center, ILCC. And our guests here today are pastors Reverend Tim Jackson and his wife, Reverend Jessica Jackson. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for selecting me and Dr. Johnson and a number of other people that we all know and revere to be celebrated, to be awarded, to be acknowledged for leading impactful lives. So today I want us to have just a conversation about what the organization Impact Living Christian Center is, to talk about the upcoming We Impact celebration dinner that's coming up, I think Saturday, October 19th, right? At the Science Museum of Minnesota. It's going to be an important event, and you can come to it. You can be supportive of it. And talk about how Dr. Johnson and I were so fortunate to be selected to be honored last year, and who, if you can say it, might be being awarded this year. So that's a lot. If you like this kind of conversation, I invite you to tune in whenever we go live with these webcasts on Facebook, but also to like this and to share it with your friends. Our mission is to create community through conversation. We need to talk to each other. We do talk to each other. Our job is to document that conversation and to lift it up and to promote it, to share it. So we want to go viral every time we go on board. Use technology, social media, to let the world know and let ourselves know that we exist and that our thoughts matter. First of all, Dr. Johnson, let me say to you, it's so good to see you all the time. And thank you for all of your work, your leadership, and for being the inspiration you are to me and everybody else in the world.
I so deeply appreciate that coming from you. It means a lot to me. Our whole world is built around our need to share our historical experiences and our future for our children. So I'm deeply honored, and thank you for inviting me along with the ministers Tim and Jessica in coming here. So thank you very much.
You have so many great and powerful and instructive stories based on your life of experience and service. And I could ask you any of a number of things, but what's on your mind this morning as you contemplate our world today? What is on your heart at the moment? What are you hoping and what are you thinking and planning for?
I thank you for asking that, because my heart is really pretty full of worries. I am concerned about the direction that our children seem to be taking and the lack of full understanding of their historical presence in our society. I worry that we as adults and elders may not be telling the story that our children need to know and need to hear over and over again what their ancestors believed in them. Our ancestors fought long and hard to free us of the oppression of slavery and oppression, and they attempted to show us that we are still here as a people, that we're here and that we have the the tradition of our ancestors to keep us moving. I'm not sure our children know that today. I'm not sure we're telling them that wonderful, heroic, important story. So the fact that you mentioned in your introduction the need for us to talk to each other, that is probably as critical today as it was just after emancipation. We need to know that we have value as a people. We believe in the work of our ancestors. We know that we're here and still here because of them and what they believed in spite of what they were exposed to. And somehow we need to create a consistent environment to tell that story. And we need to make sure that our children hear it. Because I think we are maybe at a period where words don't have the value they had in my day and perhaps in yours and in the Reverend's day, where they heard what their ancestors were saying and they could follow the model that those ancestors presented. So heavy on my heart today, Al, is the need for us as seniors, elders, experienced Black people in the society to really share the love that our ancestors taught us about who we are, and to not be discouraged because the ratio of those who know versus those who don't know sometimes is quite uneven. So we've got a job to do, I believe, to continue what you and so many of our others attempted to do throughout the development of a society that understands Black history and our role and responsibility to our children. And I'm worried right now because I think that we may not be as diligent as we need to be in the teaching. So thank you for asking that, and forgive me for the long response. But at my age, I get a little worried as to whether I will live long enough for my great-grandchildren to know our history.
Josie Johnson, thank you for sharing and for the words. And I have the same feeling, the same concern. I believe that as a wordsmith, I have a sense of the power and the impact of words. And I believe we have to tell each other again and again how important words are, and how we must use words, and how words embody, carry the spirit, the history, and the future of our people. It's through language. And so we need to examine not only the words themselves, but the structure, the process, the value, and the work of words, right? And one of the things that you and I both experienced, Dr. Johnson, on separate occasions, was visiting Ghana. And the thing I took away most from my visits to Accra and to Kumasi as part of the Panifest celebration, and also as part of the Stair Step Initiative, where we try to bring elders and young children to the continent to interact with families, communities. We took boys and we took girls with elders, great experiences. But all the meetings I attended opened a certain way. And the way the meeting opened generally was with the convener giving reverence or speaking, asking permission of the departed, of the ancestors, acknowledging the history the ancestors, and the presence of the ancestors in our lives today.
Exactly.
And then acknowledging each other. So they start by acknowledging the chiefs and the queens and the kings in the room and the other functionaries in the room, and they continue acknowledging all of our brothers and sisters.
Exactly.
And having acknowledged each of us, they began the discussion of the day. And I say, that's a powerful protocol.
Yes.
And maybe one of the things that we can do and should do is try to adopt a protocol for engagement that trains young people on how to approach discussion, word use, conversation, interaction, but if there's a methodology that is predictable, that manages and that regulates both what we say and how we say it,
Oh,
and
I
the
agree.
objective. So that's a thought I have.
It's a wonderful thought, Al.
Great idea.
When
That's
I
great.
think about the image that our children have of themselves today, it's the image that the Star Tribune or the New York Times or Washington Post or some other media has projected of us. And because we need to know who we are, and we need to say it out loud often and in language that our children understand, until we can do that, the image that these media project of us are not the image that our ancestors had of us or that we should have of ourselves.
Right.
So we have got to, I couldn't agree with you more, tell the story. And I remember Ghana so well. I remember, thank you for mentioning it. I'm still in contact with my junior high school student who is now a mother, a graduate, a professional. And and we have that kind of closeness that I remember as a girl, growing up with a grandmother and having just a blessed opportunity to meet my great-great-grandfather, who was a slave until he was 12. He was freed at 12, and we had a chance to meet him. And it was the joy of my life as a teenager to meet my great-grandfather and to meet this man who was what we know our people to be, and that's kind, forgiving, understanding, and sharing with us not anger, but hope, and sharing kind of the history of who we are. So I appreciate you sharing that. That's who we are. And we need to, our children don't, so many, when I think about how many of them have seen the image of my great-grandfather or my grandfather, who was a minister and proud and learned, could only go to 8th grade, but learned to read. My father and his sister, they used to tell us, they would send my grandfather, Reverend Henry Columbus Washington, letters while they were in college. And my grandfather would correct their letters and send them back. They're in college. He graduated up
Eighth
to
grade.
8th grade.
Right.
Wow.
But he was proud of his education and what he knew and corrected them. After a while, they stopped writing him. Yeah, they didn't want any more corrected letters. But I'm just saying that ancestral belief and teaching is what we have,
Yes,
but our children may not.
yes.
And we've got to know that, not separate from them, embrace them, teach them. That's what we've got to do.
So Reverend Jackson, in a nutshell, this is exactly what you're doing.
That's true.
We're here today, in a sense, talking about culture, history, and about the legacy, about how we share and pass along and recognize and acknowledge service to the community. So let me ask you, one of the reasons you're here today is to present to me and Dr. Johnson the elder stick. So let me turn it over to you, Reverend Tim Jackson, and you, Reverend Jessica Jackson, to talk about these and to make the presentation. And I'm going to ask you to talk about your vision, your work, and where you see us going. And I think Dr. Johnson and I have sort of set a context for you to speak from.
Right, right. Well, we're honored, my wife and I are honored to be here with two great leaders of our community, our sages, our wisdom teachers, who we stand on their shoulders to continue to work and to build on your legacy. And so Pastor Jess and I are honored to be here and to share with the community what we're trying to do and how we're trying to rewrite the narrative that is out there that says that black and brown people are others, or they're non-contributors. And so I will speak towards the vision of our church and how we came to the name Impact Living Christian Center and how that evolved into We Impact. My wife is the executive director of our nonprofit, We Impact, so I'll let her speak in that regards.
So, you know, so much of what you already said really does resonate, and it is what is in our heart to attempt to do at this next kind of level and generation. You talked about having a consistent environment, Dr. Josie, of how we can tell these stories and make sure that young people know them and then can take them and apply them. That's our hope with We Impact. Pastor Tim can talk about the church and how we got to We Impact, but We Impact seeks to solve problems, improve communities, and inspire hope. And one of our, you know, years ago, I remember Elder Mahmoud planted a seed about building institutions. And anybody that's been around knows that he was always saying we have to build institutions.
You say the word, you think Mahmoud.
Exactly. You hear the word institution, you know that's who it came from. And that seed grew. And so, as my husband would talk about, when we started the church, we started the church not just to have a church, but to be a problem-solving, institution-building church. And so, what we seek to do with this second institution, which is We Impact, the nonprofit, is to create that space, that intentional space for young people. We do it through our College Crew program, that is a leadership development program, and it's for 6th through 12th graders. We started with 7th through 12th grade, but we had so many eager 6th graders that didn't want to wait until 7th grade that we extended the pipeline. And what we've learned is that we actually need that much time to undo some things and to impart some things so that by the time they graduate from high school, and it all started with that statistic that too many of our children aren't graduated from high school in this state. And all of us should know that, you know, it's somewhere around 50% or more that of our black children that have not crossed that line, and we can talk all day about what that means. But that's where this program started. But we wanted to prepare them to be leaders and to know who they are. And so with the College Crew program and then the We Impact celebration, it's an attempt to create this space, an intergenerational space. And the awards, which you two are so deserving of, are an attempt to tell stories of ancestors, some of whom are still with us, thankfully. And make sure that you know that there are heroes and sheroes right here in this community that many of our young people don't know. When we prepare for each celebration, and the youth begin to prepare to give the awards to the awardees, and we say, "Have you ever heard? Do you know? Do you know who the first black mayor was?" With a lot of talk these days about our St. Paul mayor, of course, and that's good and fine. But do you know there was a black mayor before
Right.
the black mayor in St. Paul?
Right.
No.
And a female.
A female.
And it was a
right.
woman. No, they didn't know. And so we had to bring that story forward to say, no, there was. And she's still alive. And you need
Yes.
to know her and,
Yes.
and meet her. And so that's really what we're trying to do, to really extend the wisdom that you all have shared with us. Mr. McFarlane, you've done it for decades now through your work with Insight and all of the other publication work that you do, to tell our stories.
Yes.
Think of FUBU, for us, by us,
Yeah.
right? In that same spirit.
Yeah.
Tell our stories for us, for our healing. And all of the stories are not good.
That's right.
We have stories that are mixed bags,
That's right.
but we still need to tell the stories.
That's right.
Right.
Because we only
Right.
heal by knowing truth.
That's
Right,
exactly
right.
History is not just what we want it to be. History is what we remember and what we know.
Right.
And so, so that is what we're trying to do through the We Impact organization. College Crew is, our seminal program there. We have other programs, but it is our cornerstone program in working with the youth throughout the year. And then the celebration is a culmination of the year and an attempt to bring it all together in this space where we can celebrate what we've accomplished and bring those stories forward so that young people know who we collectively are.
And to know the image that they need to have, not the one that others have presented to us.
That's right.
They need to know who they are and from whence they've come.
Absolutely.
Right. And
And,
brother, sorry.
Go ahead.
And Brother Al, to your point, We Impact, the work that we're doing with We Impact grew out of the ethos of our church. What are we doing in our church? And the methodology is there. I mean, we can change the methodology, but we have a blueprint that's working with Dr. King and the nonviolence movement. His whole ethos evolved out of this Christian context, and I think the faith church, the faith community, the black church has a voice, and I would argue that that voice has diminished. And at Impact, it is my responsibility as the senior pastor of the church to make sure that we are grappling with a theology that fits our context.
Yes.
When you're dealing with brothers and sisters who go to work on Monday and they don't know if they're going to be fired on Friday. When we're shepherding folks that are the working poor, and they're dealing with these racial tensions and racial injustice every day. And so my theology has to fit that context. So I'm bending towards James H. Cone, who wrote this epic masterpiece piece of literature back in '69 during the Civil Rights Movement,
I have
titled,
his book.
Yeah,
and
Black
had
Theology,
a chance
Black
to
Power.
meet him.
It's-
Wow.
Yeah,
It-
powerful,
yeah.
powerful. And so my theology is evolving because we're dealing with our children that are not graduating. We're dealing with gangs. We're dealing with violence. We're dealing with these disparities. The gap is widening. And so as a clergy, as a member of the church, it is, as I serve the church, and not only do I serve the church, I serve my community, it is our responsibility to create an institution that is built on our Christian ethics, but that is inclusive and that speaks to all the needs and welcomes everyone, whether we're of different faiths or different beliefs. Black and brown are struggling, and we're facing the same issues around oppression and disparities. And so we sat down and we grappled, what kind of church do we want? We want to make sure that we're a church, a ministry that builds institutions, a ministry that deals with the educational gap. 50% of our kids are struggling to graduate from high school. We need to solve that problem. We need to be at the table. financial literacy. We have in our church right now an awards program that the first family that raises their credit score to $700, the church will write a check to give them $700, because we understand that's economic power. We understand that not everybody in the church can be poor, because if everyone's poor, we cannot solve these problems. And so we need a social economics base that's going to support our vision. And so everything is evolving out of this context of impact. Our mission statement is God's word impacts us and we impact the world. And that's what we're trying to do through these programs. But we cannot forget about those who have come before us. We cannot forget about the Dr. Josie Johnsons and the Al McFarlanes. We stand on your back and we acknowledge, and I think that's the problem today, that our young people, to your point, Dr. Josie, is that they don't understand the story. It is my responsibility as a faith leader to revisit those stories and to interject those stories into my sermonic text so that our congregation is familiar with where we have come from. Because if we don't go back and look, how can we embrace this future that we have if we don't understand where we have come from? And so I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to do this work. It's difficult work, but God has given us the grace to do it. And we are just honored to honor the two of you and all those who stand with you that we recognized on last year.
Josie, you were saying before we started taping, you had a question that you were raising. I can't remember exactly what it was. I said, hold up, don't ask it yet.
Yes, right,
because it would be great for the conversation. Do you remember what it was?
Well, I think, I'm not sure I have exactly the correct memory, but I know one of the things that continues to worry me is the fact that we are not talking to each other. And what I am trying to discover is, what do our children hear? What do they hear us say? What are they reading from the written words about us, or the movies they see, or the plays they hear about? And how can we, as adults in their community, help them interpret what's being said and done, and try to teach them who they are, because they come from such rich, important heritage to still be here and to have been treated the way our ancestors were, to have been freed in 1863 or 5 or whatever year we want to say. And what happened? The whole system had to then create the environment that they needed in order to keep us enslaved. And I just wonder, what do our children hear today? What are they hearing? And to know that everything says we're at the bottom of any statistic you want to read about, whatever is the poorest status, that's where we are. That's what the press says anyway. And I think that it's important to hear the voices of our ancestors, and they're out there. We need to have them talk to our children.
Please.
You know, before we went live, we were talking about the sticks that we are presenting to you, and they could be considered as walking sticks, but we envision them more as talking sticks. And so, as you speak about elders needing to be heard, you know, part of what we thought of is that by presenting these sticks to you, this is, you know, us saying yes, we know that you need to be heard, and presenting them to you to say, speak.
Right.
We're listening. You know, that in the way that you describe the protocol in Ghana of acknowledging
Right.
who's in the room and who's started some things long before we get to the young people. It's really that spirit that we intend in presenting these to you and the other elders from last year. Every year we haven't presented this as a gift,
Right.
and as the award, and so that's what the heart and intent is in these particular awards.
So coming up on October 19th, that's going to be the fourth We Impact Awards. Dr. Johnson and I were part of the celebrants in the third award.
Yes.
And I looked at the list. These are all friends of ours and
Yes.
people that we all admire and revere and would respect.
Yeah.
But I think it would be wonderful, Pastor Jess, if you would read the names of the people that have been awarded in the past 3 years.
I will.
And maybe if you are able to announce the new ones, I don't know if you can or not. If you can't, don't. But do what you can. And
Well,
say the names of the ones that have been awarded in the past.
let's start with the past.
And you may want to
And talk about it.
save.
Yes.
You may want to save as a surprise.
Sure.
the
Well, it is a
current
bit of
list.
surprise because we are still communicating with some of them, and we
Right.
want to make sure that they are aware that they're getting an award this
That's
year from us
exactly
before we
right.
share it with the
So
broader
don't-
community.
Don't move
We'll hold
into
off
them.
on this year,
That's
but,
right.
it'll be a big drum roll as we
That's
leave
right.
from here today. But honored to share those who came before. So the first year that we held this event, it was in 2015. And that was actually the 10th year of the church anniversary. So it was a blended kind of celebration in that the church underwrote that event. We were celebrating our anniversary as an institution and then announcing that we had these plans to start this new nonprofit, because College Crew and all of the other programs that are now a part of We Impact, they started as ministries in the church. It's just folks in the church said, we can't just stand on the sidelines,
Right,
have church,
right.
and not do anything about our black children not graduating from
right,
high school.
right.
So we just started something on Wednesday night, Bible study. And then it grew to Saturday mornings,
A's
and then
Pay
it
it,
grew, and
right.
then it grew. And so, these things, the Welcome Home Prison Reentry, that started as a part of the church. And then as they grew into programs, and then just from an organizational standpoint, and with Elder Mahmoud's voice ringing in our head, we
Right,
said we
right.
need to set
Right,
up a
right.
separate institution. So that was 2015. And that year, as you may recall, not that unfortunately most years we have too many black men that are being murdered, but 2015 there was a spirit and there were just like rampant deaths that were taking place. And so we decided to push back against that and award all black men
Right.
awards that year. So the list that year, our criminal justice impactor was former Chief Judge Michael J. Davis of the U.S. District Court. Our education impactor was Justice Alan Page, the founder of the Page Education Foundation, among other things. Our faith impactor that year was none other than Pastor Timothy Jackson, Senior Pastor of Impact Living. Our global impactor was Blessing Rugara, who is our brother and former University of Minnesota student regent. And I have to say, and Blessing has a investment firm in South Africa. He left the Twin Cities to start that firm in Johannesburg. And I have to give him credit, because this whole dinner and the ideal of honoring our elders emerged from him. It was Blessing's
Right,
ideal.
right.
And he has struggled for various reasons to be with us each year. He was with us by video that first year, and he will be here live this year. So that's another draw for anybody that knows Blessing. You want to be in the room with him this year. The health and wellness impactor was Melvin Anderson, founder of Track Minnesota Elite. The mentorship impactor was Ezel Jones, owner of Fifth Quarter Enterprise. And the We Impactor, so someone from within the We Impact organization award, went to Elder Mr. Jim James Bransford, retired from Hennepin County, and he was a founding member of our Welcome Home advisory team. In 2017, our criminal justice impactor went to Patricia Crumley, who is a solo practitioner here, Crumley Law Office. Education impactor went to Doris Baylor of the YMCA and the JDT group, of course. Faith impactor was Reverend Marshall Holman, who at that time was chaplain of the Minnesota Department of Corrections. Or within the Department of Corrections. She's since retired. Health and Wellness impactor was Maya Moore, and of the WNBA. We were able to give her award on the court at one of the games because she was not able to make it to the dinner. Mentorship impactor was Wookie Wea, founder and president of Youth Prize. And our We Impactor Award in 2017 went to Miss Diane Benz, also retired from the Hennepin County Community Corrections, and she was also a member of our founding Welcome Home team. I was surprised that year with an award as well, which was a Beast Impactor Award. BEAST stands for Bold, Educated, Advanced, Strong, and Tenacious. So when we talk to the youth about who's the beast, you know, that's what we're talking about, not beast mode. So then, of course, last year's illustrious elders group. So if you notice, the first year was all men, the second year was all women. Last year was a mixed group of elders, and that included our civic leadership impactor, Sharon Sells Belton, of course, our former first mayor, and educational impactor, Archie Gibbons of the Gibbons Foundation for African American Literature. Was blessed to serve on that board for a few years. And faith impactor, Reverend Gloria Roach Thomas, lead pastor of Camphor United Methodist Church. Our health and wellness impactor was a posthumous award that was given to Dr. Joseph White, author of Black Man Emerging and Professor Emeritus of UC Irvine. Impacted so many of us, that book and his life and his work here in the Twin Cities. Mentorship impactor was Elder Mahmoud El-Khati, of course, Professor Emeritus at McAllister, and cultural commentator. And then, of course, our social social entrepreneur award went to you, Mr. McFarlane, for all of your work here at Insight News, not just as an entrepreneur, but to bring this social consciousness to our community that you brought through your entrepreneurial work. And STEM Impactor Award was Dr. Retha Clark King, chemist and former president of Metro State. And then, of course, our Social Justice Impactor Award went to you, Dr. Josie Johnson. So quite a list, a diverse list, we think. You know, we're intentional about trying to identify those who may be more high profile and more people may know, but also others whose stories are equally as important in their work and service to community is impactful, but may not have that same kind of profile or platform. So I've tried to do that each year.
Yeah, so exciting.
Tell us about the sticks, and thank you so much from me, and I'm sure Dr. Johnson, thank you so much. These are beautiful.
Aren't they beautiful?
Tell us about them.
Thank you.
Well, these sticks are unique. As my wife mentioned, Blessing, who also is a founding board member of our church, helped us frame our vision, is his home country. He's a U.S. citizen, but he's from Zimbabwe, South Africa. And so we decided to craft these awards from that part of the world, given the historical context in regards to our ancestors. And so that's how we came up with the walking stick.
Wonderful.
They came from Johannesburg, and they got held up in customs last year, which is why we didn't have them at the dinner. But
What
We gotta
was
break
that?
them.
I don't, what do you mean held up in customs?
They were supposed to have gotten to us before they did. You know, I think with all that's going on in our customs and immigration world, our package received a little more scrutiny than
Right.
it was intended to have. And so we thought it was going to get here by a certain date, and it came about a week later. So, yeah, we thought, you know, the black and white would be especially appropriate for you, Mr. McFarlane, because you lay it down in black and white.
Absolutely. Perfect. Yeah.
That's perfect.
Listen, I want to thank you, Pastor Jessica Jackson and Pastor Tim Jackson, for what you're doing with the Impact Living Christian Center. I remember being at one of your events maybe a couple of years ago in which your speaker, I can't remember his name, but he talked about being and developing self-reliance in the black community.
Oh, John Hope Bryant.
Yeah,
That's who it
that
was.
was Hope Bryant,
Great
yeah.
presentation. I think I heard you all say at the time that one of your visions and missions was that everybody in your congregation would strive towards having a credit score of 750
Yeah.
or
Right,
700.
right,
credits.
right.
700. And I said, man,
Right,
what a great idea.
Right.
I mean, what a great goal is to have that be part of the daily conversation idea planted in your
right,
mind
right.
that, number one, I could, and that I should,
Yes.
that it's doable,
Yes.
and that it makes sense.
Yes.
And to have that as part of my breathing as I walk each day, how
Yes.
it manages what I do, the choices I make, because I've got some goals
Yes.
to
Yes.
meet. And so I
Yes.
love that.
Yes.
And just the number of people that were there and the spirit of the people that was evident is just so wonderful. It was the same in the evening of the awards that Dr. Johnson and I attended last year. So I love your work. I love you. I love you.
Yes.
I love what you're doing, and I praise you and I thank you for this great work. And I know that both of you have these marvelous personal stories and histories that reveal the quintessential strength and power that keeps us buoyed, right? And moving forward and committed to a vision and a goal to success. I say at this time, you know, we simply have to remind each other, Dr. Johnson, that success, that victory, not success, victory is inevitable and victory is imminent. It's just around the corner.
Amen.
Let's keep
Yes.
working.
Yes.
Let's keep working.
Yes.
One more breath.
Yes.
One more step.
Yes.
Yeah, one more thought.
Yes.
And believe. Give it all you got.
Yes,
You know,
that's right.
every
Yes.
time. So
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to close with that. I just want to thank you, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Thank you. You
Thank
are
you.
such a blessing
Well,
Yeah.
thank
to
you.
humanity.
Our community is my blessing. I don't think any of us would still be here if it wasn't for our community.
That's right.
Right.
They
Sure.
gave us the strength and belief to do it, and I'm grateful. My community, our people, our history,
Yes.
our ancestors have kept us going, and we've got to keep going in their memory. Can't let them down. They sacrificed for us.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. This is family talk. It really is. It's just us sitting here, being ourselves and talking with each other and reflecting on the blessings and the work and recommitting ourselves to doing what we have to do to build communities and society. If you like this conversation, simply want you to share it with your friends, like it on Facebook, and just be alert when we do these live webcast podcasts from the Marcus Garvey House. We don't announce them too much in advance, we just do them. But I think you can, if you like the program, you'll get notifications, so when we do them again.
Good.
But thank you for listening, for watching, and thanks to my guest. We'll see you next time. I'm Al McFarlane. Harry, thank you.